Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Lurie, and I just want to thank you all for joining us at the Windows edition of Tech Community Live, post-Ignite edition of the Windows edition of Tech Community Live. I am here with some friends to talk about managing Windows updates, and we're going to start off real fast with some introductions. So I'm going to go in the order I see you all on my screen. So we'll start with Shirby, then Nikita, then Chris. Shirby, I'd love to hear what you do at Microsoft or with Windows updates, and anything else you'd like to share.
Hey everyone, it's so good to be back on the tech community with you all. My name is Surabhi Kalla, and I'm a product manager with the Windows Autopatch team. So basically looking after all quality update, feature update, management.
Great, thanks. Nikita?
Hi everyone, it's good to meet you all. My name is Nikita Deshpande, and I am part of the Windows Hot Patch team. So I'm looking after a lot of the customer experience our users have on the client side for Hot Patch. Great to meet you.
That's such a game changer, Hot Patch. We'll talk about that over the next little while. Chris?
Hey folks, name's Chris Tulip. I've worked on most parts of Autopatch at some point over the last 3 years. So right now I've been working a lot with making sure that we deal with licensing properly. Backfill to Business Premium to A was a big one. We've been working with government SKUs recently, lots of that sort of stuff, as well as just looking across the product at other parts. So kind of have been working on this for a long time and probably have spent too many cycles thinking about it.
That's awesome. And you did mention government SKUs, so I'm going to have to ask you a question in a little while, not just yet. This is a post-Ignite edition. So again, I'd love to know like some of the Ignite announcements. Shirby, we'll start with you. What are you excited about that got announced at Ignite last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever Ignite was?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited about the Autopatch update readiness reporting suite that got announced. So like a better visibility of the entire fleet for your organization. How are they getting managed for what content types? Having like a unified and a singular view of all the alerts that the devices are observing, and then the remediations on how to fix that. So I mean, that's something that keeps me awake at night, and I'm super excited about how we go forward and any feedback that we can get from our customers on that front.
Thanks. Nikita, what are you excited about that got announced?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about maintenance windows, which is something lighting up in Autopatch. We get a lot of asks from our customers from Hot Patch saying, Hot Patch is great, it saves us one reboot, but what about the rest? So really excited to see how maintenance windows is going to enable our customers to manage more of those updates and make them more disruption-free.
Such a common ask. On my team, we deal with customers. I'm a customer-facing engineering team, so we talk to customers all the time about what their wants and their needs. And maintenance windows is definitely right up there with Intune. Chris, what did we announce in your area?
So these two kind of stole some of my thunder. I was going to say both of those as exciting things. So I'll pick on the third favorite thing, which is the reliability initiative. Specifically stuff like quick machine recovery, backup and restore, and point-in-time restore. I think are really amazing features. Point-in-time restore especially is like, hey, something went wrong, change went out. You can move back in time, an hour, 2 hours to when that device was moving and have that change paused. Incredible. Like, it's so cool. So there's loads of stuff going on there. And I'll echo everything that Surabhi and Nikita just said. I love both those features.
That's great. And the backup and restore, we have an AMA coming up later this morning or this evening or this afternoon on the backup and restore. Let's get into it. We've got some great questions. And the first question I'm going to read is, I always say from my friend Stefan Lalancette. Stefan, thank you so much for all your support. We see you on the third Thursday of every month when we do our Windows office hours. We see you in every tech community. Thank you so much for your support. So Stefan's question, how do you recommend that we transition from Cloud Update config at office.com to Autopatch for our Office patches? Chris, can we manage Office patches and Autopatch as well? Is that a thing yet?
Yeah, so essentially with Autopatch groups, there is some really basic Office management capability. Honestly, if you've got Cloud Updates set up, I'd say, great, stick with it. You don't need to worry too much about it. And so depending on how nerdy people want me to get, essentially what Autopatch does with Autopatch groups is we set up a bunch of configuration policy that says you can configure deferrals and kind of like you do with a Windows quality update. The Office CDN actually does a gradual rollout by itself, so that means that there's some wiggle room in there. So my recommendation is, like, if you're doing nothing, then you can use the client policy that we set up with AutoPatch. If you're using cloud policy, that's going to overwrite all the AutoPatch stuff anyways, and that's a really great solution. And longer term, AutoPatch is looking at how do we integrate cloud updates anyways. So I would just stick with what you're doing in terms of cloud updates in config.office.com.
That's a great tip, and it's funny because on our teams we almost always say you have to use my product, but in this case, the existing product, the config.office.com, probably is the right solution that's already being used. So thanks for that. We got a question. I'm going to go to Surabhi. I'm going to give this one to you. Any news or any ETA in the Windows Update for Business drivers improvements to align with? I'm going to have to use WFB because I know my friend Aria is listening, so I'll use the term WFB. Any news or ETA in the WFB driver improvements to align with WFB deadlines and better visibility on which devices each driver apply to?
Yes, so we have received a lot of feedback on that front that customers really want to know the applicability for the devices for each driver, and that is something that we're actively baking in the oven right now. Given it's a non-NDA forum, I would not talk about the dates yet, but yes, absolutely on the radar, and we're tracking it closely.
Thanks, and it's a good point. And I'm going to just remind everyone that it is a public event, so thank you, Surabhi, for mentioning that. Chris, while we wait for more questions, I'm going to go back to something you mentioned during your introduction, the introduction into the G Suites, the government SKUs. Anything you want to talk about with that? Anything that we can clarify?
Yeah, so I'd say we launched to an initial set of SKUs back on, I think it was 11/10, so November 10th. But there are additional SKUs that we are still needing to backfill, and so not everyone has gotten it yet. That's coming later in January. And so, some of it was just a phased rollout, make sure everything works properly. Some of it was just, oops, we missed one. So I apologize for that. If there are folks out there who are like, hey, where's my auto patch? Why is it the exact same experience that it was before? Specifically, if you're like a G5 customer, you may be running into that. So that's one thing I wanted to call out. But the good news is the whole auto patch product is coming to government. We are not government GCCH, so we're not in the government specific cloud yet, but we are in the essentially government commercial cloud folks. So we are compatible with that now.
And it's just the G5, you said, right? There
are a couple others that are coming later in January as well, but the one we've heard people essentially bring up the most is that.
And we have a link here. If you want any more information, if you are a government tenant, aka.ms, I think that it went away before I saw what it was, aka.ms auto patch for US Gov, all one word, auto patch for US Gov for more information on that. I'm going to go over to Nikita for this next question. How do I know which devices are actually getting hot patched in my environment? Some of my devices might be hot patched, some of them aren't. How do I know which ones are being hot patched?
Yep, that's a great question. So right now we have a couple of capabilities for you to check. I'll start with some that are related to our prereqs, since that is a net new way to check our availability and eligibility for hot patch. So you'll now be able to see which devices in your tenants may be able to get hot patched but aren't. But we also have a pre-existing hot patch report within AutoPatch to check every release if those devices are getting hot patched or not. Hope that addressed.
Do you mind if I jump in and add a little couple other things that are coming? So Surabhi mentioned update readiness earlier. And so like some of the questions we frequently hear around which devices are getting hot patched, which devices are ready for hot patch, all that sort of stuff. That's where we're expanding upon that a fair bit with the update readiness product. So you can see things like which ones actually are on 24H2+, which ones have VBS enabled, cheapy for the appropriate hardware types. All those sorts of prereqs are going to be visible as a part of that alerts report in the update readiness platform. And that'll make it a lot easier to understand which ones are getting hot patched, as well as which ones are ready for hot patch as well. So that should help clarify some things. So sorry, just to build on your answer there, Nikita.
No, you
that's
can please.
huge.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. That's huge. And that's what we're really also excited about. We didn't get to mention that earlier to Joe's first question, but this is big.
Yeah, and really, Chris, feel free to add some color commentary to any of the questions. It's great. The more information that we can share, the better it is, and the more people will use Windows Auto Patch, Windows updates through Intune and whatnot. We got a question about extension drivers. Again, I'm going to come back to Surabhi for this. Is there a way to mitigate or control the reboots of extension drivers? So not to have random reboots because devices get those driver updates in an uncontrolled manner when using WFB driver updates. And is this something that those maintenance windows that you're referring to, will that come into play here?
So extension drivers mainly were sort of the way they work today, work in a specific fashion, because in case you have a peripheral that you want to use immediately, you don't get blocked. That was the whole idea of letting you install those extension driver updates at the time when they're made available. Currently, there's no way that we can orchestrate the drivers alongside with any specific like monthly B release or anything like that. But I would be really, really curious from the person who's asked the question if they can leave some feedback, and if that is something that they would intend us to do, and if that they want us to align those reboots, what would they want us to align those reboots with? Like, would it be the monthly B release that makes more sense, or end of the month like D release? That is something that we're actually looking towards for feedback. But right now, there's no specific way by which we can orchestrate the reboot of these drivers in a specific way or specific frequency.
What's the best way to leave that feedback? I know on the Intune side, we have aka.ms Intune feedback is the best way to leave feedback for Intune. For Windows updates and Windows Update for Business and all these other auto patch, would that work as well, aka.ms Intune feedback, or do you have a different site to go to?
They could use aka.ms/Intune feedback. That is something that we review on a weekly basis as well. Or if they would want to reach out to us through Tech Community and just leave a comment in there, we would reach out through that as well.
Thanks so much. We got another question on Tech Community about a CVE dashboard. I've seen some information about an upcoming CVE dashboard for Windows Auto Patch. What all will be needed to have access to that? Is Windows Defender Agent required? Chris?
So I'm actually going to throw this one directly to Surabhi because she was the person who made it. So I would, feel I could talk about it, but that wouldn't feel right.
Great.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So what we've actually done with the CVEs is we've actually filtered down all the CVEs that were related to Windows OS in particular. And that information we're pulling out from Microsoft Security Center Board, so MSRC, which is more commonly known. And we pull that out with every B release or every out-of-band security release, and we display that. In addition to that, we also give you easy access to tell you which CVE was fixed with what release, and then which devices still are vulnerable to those specific CVEs because they're pending the update. So just painting that vulnerability landscape for your tenant. And then we also have very easy access for each CVE fix for the knowledge base article, which has detailed information of what are the impacted components within Windows OS caused because of those specific CVEs that are out there. In addition to that, the dashboard will also have information about the criticality of the CVE, which has been validated by the CVSS board, which is a global entity. And then it also provides you a score based on which you can determine how tolerant your organization is, or if you want to take any immediate actions like expediting an update, because that vulnerability could be causing a lot of impact to your footprint. But nothing additional needed for that. Our information purely comes from MSRC.
Yeah, so I was just going to clarify that. So Windows Defender Agent, the last part of that question, that should not be needed for this because it's all coming from MSRC.
That's it.
Great. And I also want to clarify one other thing. And we've been doing, we call it B, C, and D updates for several years now, but I still come across customers that don't know what that means. And you've mentioned the B updates a couple of times. Can you just clarify what you mean when you say B update?
Yes. So thank you for bringing this up because I've heard feedback on that as well. We have updated all Microsoft documentation. Now we just do 2 releases on a regular cadence. One is the second week of the month, which is Patch Tuesday, most commonly known. We call it a B release, which includes all your security fixes for the month, and then followed by a D release. So there's no C release now anymore. We just go to the week 4, which is D release, which includes all your non-security or operational fixes. And then in between, if an occasion happens where we cannot wait for a fix to be given to the customers, then we introduce the concept of out-of-band or OOB releases, which there's no specific cadence to that. It just happens if it really needs to happen. But there's just 2 per month. One is the second week of the month, and which is called the B release, and the 4th week of the month, which is the D release.
Great. Thanks so much for that clarity. All right, so let's get back to the questions. We have a question on Tech Community. Will we be getting KB level reporting soon? Seeing exact KB updates per device, failed updates, etc. It's probably gonna be the Surabhi show, I think.
Yeah, I can take that one as well. So with the CVE report that we have, the way we've built that report, and it is going live GA on the 4th of this month. So like stay tuned, a blog post would be coming out super soon. So the way we've done it is we'll list all the CVEs that have been fixed for the month, and association between the CVE, the update release, and the KB article with that. So you'll be able to map that which KB article is needed in order to, and which release was that KB article provided with, and then which devices still do not have that KB article installed or the payload specifically installed on the devices, making the devices still vulnerable. So yes, that association between a release and a KB and a CVE is coming with the CVE dashboard.
Oh, great. Fantastic. We have a question about hot patching. And before I ask about hot patching, actually, it's auto patching that I'm looking at the question for. In my mind, I saw hot patching. So I'm going to go to the auto patch question first, but I'm going to come back to a hot patch question for Nikita. But with auto patch, with regards to auto patch, what are the benefits it offers if we're not using a ring approach to patching? We're currently patching using Woofy via Intune. So if I'm not using rings, do I still need auto patch, Chris?
First of all, great question. I hear this a lot from different sizes of customers. And so they're kind of like a lot of small businesses who don't care about having a gradual deployment. They only have a couple hundred seats. And they're like, yeah, my devices just update. It's good. So the biggest kind of value for those folks is hot patch because you get secure faster. Like that's really the benefit of hot patch is instead of waiting for a reboot, which can take 3-5 days kind of on average, you're getting patched as soon as it's installed, and there's no reboot, no disruption, all that sort of stuff. So that's the benefit, like at the most basic level. Then from there, as you scale up, you talk about Woofy and Intune. So one thing is it's all auto patch these days. Woofy is just a feature of auto patch. It's all part of the same product. So phenomenal. You're already using auto patch, and so we care about all of those things. The other thing that you might need to do is reporting. So auto patch provides reporting as long as your devices are essentially in Intune or we're working on stuff through the graph. So that's where we're looking at essentially additional value there. The reason I care about reporting is stuff that Surabhi was just talking about, understanding your security posture, understanding all that sort of stuff, as well as just generally, are you patched? Are you compliant? Are you in a good state? If you're in a more regulated industry, people might care about that sort of stuff. And then as customers grow, it's usually, I'd say, around the 500 to 1,000 seat range that I see people starting to set up that gradual rollout and more of that ring-based rigor because they start having more folks who are a larger application estate, more concerned about things breaking and all that sort of thing. So that's generally, I'd say, how I'd look at it is start with hot patch. You get immediate value there. It's a great feature. I'm super impressed by it. From there, set up your rings, use auto patch groups to automatically set up all that sort of stuff for you. If you've already got something in place, phenomenal. You're still using auto patch. It's all the same stuff under the hood. So that's my probably too long-winded answer to all that.
Nikita, I'm going to come gonna come to you to ask a question about something Surabhi was just talking about. Oh, we do have a blog that talks about everything Chris was just mentioning, aka.ms hot patch with auto patch. Make sure you review that as well. Nikita, something Surabhi was just talking about was the B weeks and the D weeks, and if we had anything in the middle, any kind of out of band after Patch Tuesday, before the D Tuesday, we might do an out of band update. But with hot patching, even those updates should be hot patched, correct? So if I'm on the hot patch train and I get an out of band update, I still shouldn't need to reboot. I should still have that security immediately upon installation, not just the B and the D updates. Is that correct?
Should be, if that out of band update is related to a security release. So there are scenarios where we need to do that across Microsoft. And if you're part of the hot patch train and that out of band update relates to those security updates, you'll remain in that hot patch train. Now, there might be some that cannot, but we'll do our best to have those type of things documented via release notes if it's going to remove people from the hot patch band.
All right, cool. And how do I know? We got this question on X. How do I know if my devices in my tenant are hot patch eligible, or which ones are hot patch eligible?
Another great question. I'll go back to what Chris was mentioning and Surabhi mentioned earlier, which is the UAR or auto patch update readiness piece. And there's good reporting that we have coming up about which of those devices are hot patch ready, and if not, what's the prereq that's missing. Going a bit granular into our hot patch prereqs, there are some ways you can check this and then build your tenant to be hot patch ready. One of our base requirements is having virtualization-based security on. Through Intune, we have a way to enable that prereq at scale. So that helps set your tenant up and have eligibility across the board. And with our ARM64 devices, there's also a way in Intune to make sure you have Chippy disabled within that. So there's really an easy and effective way to set these prereqs at scale. And then with the new reporting coming up and the existing reports, you'll be able to see which ones are ready for hot patch and then which get hot patched. Reports.
Yep, great. We got a question on tech community that we may need some more information on. So I'll read the question to you all and let us know if we need to ask more information. Is there any way to have feature updates installed right away, like we can in Config Manager, and not have to wait hours or days for the update agent to decide that it's time to start the installation after having create that update deployment? So Chris, in Configuration Manager, you can send out those feature updates and have them installed right away. In Intune, is there a delay that the attendee is asking about?
There are a couple scenarios I can imagine here. I'm going to say this is probably not talking about out-of-box experience, which is its own thing. That's Ubi, and instead talk about kind of the feature update experience generally. So the way it works is device goes and talks to Windows Update, and Windows Up and essentially says, I've scanned my local area. What is applicable to me? If that device has a feature update policy, then essentially what happens is AutoPatch tells Windows Update which version is applicable to that device. Once you set the version in Intune, that tells AutoPatch. AutoPatch tells Woo. There's, I don't think, much latency there. And then the next thing you're waiting for is essentially the device to check in and scan with Woo, which I believe is under 8 hours. So it shouldn't be days of waiting. You might see like an 8-hour sort of delay between changing the version and something starting to kick off. But generally, it's fairly instantaneous.
Yeah, that's what I expected. You did bring up a good point. If I've installed like I do an autopilot deployment and maybe Windows 11 22H2 got installed, and it may take a little while for the enrollment in Intune to talk to AutoPatch and say, oh, I've got this update available. But as you said, it shouldn't be days or weeks in that case, correct?
Just to add on to that, the only other thing that I would check on the device itself is to check for the client-side policy for feature update deferral and ensure that there's nothing that has been set. So all our documentation for the best practices, we do say if you're using feature update deployment through Windows AutoPatch, make sure that you set all of that to 0. And then whatever deferral period, like whether you want it as soon as possible or on a specific day, will take effect from AutoPatch.
That's a great point. The deferral policies. A lot of people, they set them and they forget that they set them, or they set them for some other reason, and then they're following through to the next feature release, and it's still having a deferral policy. So that's a great point as well. Thanks so much, Surabhi, for bringing
Thank
that
you,
up.
Surabhi. I totally forgot to mention that.
See, it's great to build on everyone's answers. All right, so we get another question from tech community. Either someone's excited to see me, which I'm sure is not the case, or they're excited to use the term WFBE. So we are using WFBE. We're still using WFBE, auto patch, but not proper auto patch in our Intune managed devices. How easy is it to transition to proper auto patch? Do any of the WFBE policies tattoo, or any gotchas that we should be aware of, please? So if I'm currently using what we used to call Windows Update for Business, I'm transitioning to auto patch. Is there anything special I have to do for my devices or my policies?
Do you want me to take this one, Surabhi, or do you want to? Okay. So the short answer is under the hood. And when you say WFBE policies, I'm assuming you're talking about Windows 10 update rings and Intune. It's all the same stuff under the hood. So the advantage to moving to auto patch groups is it handles the distribution and creation of those update ring policies, feature update policies, and all the other types of policies for you, as well as it handles the distribution of devices into different enter groups for you. So if you say you want to have a 5-ring rollout, we create 5 enter groups. You tell us what group to scan. That gets scanned hourly, and then we pull devices out of that and redistribute it into the appropriate rings. You remove a device from that group, we remove it from the rings. That's really the advantage of auto patch groups, as well as not needing to handle all that stuff yourself. So the simple answer is, if you're stoked on what you have today and it works perfectly, and you're not worried about having automatic distribution of devices, then you're probably just fine. Like it's all good. If you really want to have automatic distribution and set that up, phenomenal. That's why we built the feature. And in terms of transition, the thing I'd say there is the easiest way is build your auto patch group first. Then in your existing policies, since we create enter groups for all of those, you can just add those enter groups as exclusions to your existing policy, and then just slowly move over whatever groups you want from your old rings to the auto patch group. It'll start dynamically picking those devices up. And then as they get added to the appropriate enter groups as part of the auto patch group, then it'll just exclude them from your old policies. Since it's just moving from one update ring to another update ring, there shouldn't be any tattooing because, again, we're setting the same settings. So hopefully that all makes sense. Feel free to reach out and follow up with me if you got questions. Always happy to chat.
Thanks, Chris. And Surabhi, did you have anything you wanted to add to that as well?
No, I think that's been covered well. The only other thing, or an alternative, I wouldn't even say an alternative, a complementary approach could be using the quality update approval, which was also announced during Ignite, which is just templatizing how you would want your quality updates to flow through and get deployed and installed on the devices. So if you've not yet, please go ahead and take a look at that in the blog post that was announced for Ignite.
Great, thanks so much. And we'll get a link to that blog post. Here it is, aka.ms Ignite 2025/autopatch for all the Ignite news on Windows Auto Patch. All right, we got another question on tech community about WFBE reports. Are the WFBE reports still the right place to check for update compliance or issues, or are all improvements coming to the Intune reports like was shown at Ignite? What's the best place to look for any of those compliance issues with Windows Windows updates?
Do you want to take it, or should I start, Surabhi?
I can start and you can add on if there's anything that's missing. But with Windows Auto Patch, there are a couple of new reports that you will see as part of the patch update readiness, which was announced during Ignite 2025. One of the reports is telling you like what are all the devices under your tenant and how you're managing them today. In addition to that, when you look at the Windows Quality Update report, it will also let you know the compliance that your ecosystem has at a point in time. And then in addition to that, there's another report which we refer to as update journey mapping, which tells you in a given point in time, it's more time stamped to show you how the deployment of a specific update is tracking on each device in your organization. So when was the update approved? When was it offered? So every granular state that the device is going through that can help you in troubleshooting any of your issues. So I would say take a look at that, and then WFPI reports is still available right now, so you can do a comparative analysis. We're not taking them away right now, but yes, you can take a look at the richness of the reports that are coming into play with Autopatch update readiness.
Yeah, the other things I'll add there are with Autopatch reporting, it's on a different, much faster pipeline. So if you try and do like an apples to apples comparison between WFPI reports and Autopatch reporting, it's not going to look identical because WFPI reports is 24 to 48 hours latent, where Autopatch reporting is a maximum of 0 to 4 hours from the client change to being represented in the cloud. So things will flow a lot faster in the Autopatch reports. Right now, those are all available in Intune. We're looking at making more things available as a part of Graph. But that's one of the big advantages of Autopatch reporting right now. And then, yeah, Surabhi just mentioned a whole bunch of awesome reports that are coming really soon. We also have existing Autopatch reporting in Intune. Just scroll down a little bit in the reporting section. It's lower than the Windows Update section in Intune. And they cover Windows quality updates. And there we have a device-by-device status, along with a bunch of optional columns that tell you things like hot patch readiness, that tell you, is the device ready to receive these updates? Are there known alerts? All that sort of stuff, as well as on the feature update side. And that's also where the CVE report's coming. So that's the main difference, I'd say, there. And as we build, we're building for the Autopatch platform in terms of reporting, and we're not investing as heavily in WFPI reports.
Yeah, we did just have a link up, aka.ms/Autopatch reports /reports for all that information that we were just talking about. We have a question about troubleshooting. I'm going to start with Surabhi on the troubleshooting question. Feel free to deflect that. How do you suggest we troubleshoot locally on the device if it's not getting the Autopatch updates? Is there anything in Event Viewer? Is there anything that we can look at to troubleshoot locally on the device?
Depends on what you're using. So there are a bunch of prerequisites, as Nikita mentioned, for hot patching. There are a bunch of prerequisites that are required for expedites. So if it's not either of those, then I think the first thing would be just making sure when you transitioned devices from on-prem to cloud native, there's no underlying GPOs that are conflicting with your cloud policies. That could be one of the things, making sure that your device is syncing regularly. So in the reports, you can actually go ahead and check your last scan time. That would make sure that the device is regularly syncing. We do get a lot of ICMs where the device is not getting the update because the device was offline for a very long period of time. So just making sure that the devices are in a healthy and hygienic state would be another one to look at. Just making sure you also can go ahead and check the Windows update logs. And that would tell you all your client-side policies that are configured and taking effect. And that can give an idea, an indication of any conflicts that could sit up there. Those are the things top of mind that I can think of. Anything, Chris, Nikita, that you guys think?
I can talk a little bit about specifically if you're looking for hot patch updates and seeing if they're properly applied. So if you're looking at one individual device, there's a couple places you can check. One is just going straight and seeing if you have the prereq set. Of course, I've mentioned this a lot of times, but there's ways from your device to check if VBS is enabled, making sure that you have the proper version of Windows running. Also, another thing that we do is for your hot patch update versus your standard non-hot patch update, we have different build numbers. So you can check our release notes and see what version you should be on, and then verify on that device what version you have to verify if you have it or not.
One other thing, for those of you that are going into Copilot and saying, Surabhi just mentioned an ICM. What does ICM mean? ICM is basically when we get a support ticket, we'll create what we call an ICM internally. It's an internal acronym that we use to basically, it's our support tickets. So thank you for that. And Nikita, I was just going to ask you a question about how to tell if a hot patch was properly applied, but you've already answered that. So I'm going to give you this one instead. Are hot patch events captured in the event viewer? So do we actually capture those hot patch events within the event viewer so maybe we can export to a sim or something like that?
Yeah, there should be. One to look for is allow rebootless updates, I believe. If that's set to 1, you'll see that you're in success. And I can get back on what other events we have if there's updates coming there.
Great, thanks. How about, we've done a lot of work, at least within Intune, for ARM64 devices. Did that carry through onto hot patching? Does hot patching work on ARM64 devices?
Yep, absolutely. So that was lighted up a couple months back, maybe around the July timeframe. So now we're available on ARM64. You do have to have Chippy disabled. So that is for some of those x86 binaries and everything like that. So there's some verification. You should do some testing. But beyond that, we're live on ARM64, thousands of devices.
Great. You've mentioned Chippy twice now, and I'm going to have to, at the end of this, I'm going to have to go into my Copilot or Bing and find out what exactly is Chippy on an ARM64 device. So I'll do that later on after this session, just to see exactly what it is. So while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, we actually just got one. So on Tech Community, we just got a question. Is it possible to use AutoPatch just to update Microsoft apps for enterprise? So I don't want to use it for Windows Update. I want to use it for Microsoft apps. Is it possible to use AutoPatch to just update Microsoft apps?
Right now, it's not. But essentially, with an AutoPatch group, there's a requirement that you at least manage quality updates. And really what that means is we're going to create Windows 10 update rings. There are a bunch of reasons for that in terms of how it was built, just because they have dependencies across multiple things, and the vast majority of customers want to essentially use it for Windows updates. And then also back to that point I was making earlier about the cloud update offering from from the Office folks is really solid, and that's actually going to take precedence over any of the policies that are put in place from Windows AutoPatch. So when we get those sorts of questions, we just say, hey, go set up cloud updates. It just works. It's a thing that people really like. If you really love client policy, you can set it all up through Intune as well. And the easiest way, if you wanted to do that, to get all the values and things, I mean, obviously it's all in docs, but if you just want to copy what AutoPatch does, you can create an AutoPatch group, see what the values we set, and then go replicate that yourself.
Great, thanks so much for explaining that. And again, for those of you that did join a little bit later, the updates, the way that the cloud updates work with Office of Microsoft 365 apps is pretty solid, as Chris was just talking about. And there's little reason to migrate from that over to AutoPatch. Feel free to do that. But again, it's a solid offering that they already offer, and there's no reason to complicate things, at least in the short term, while you're doing that migration. All right, we got a question on Tech Community about pausing updates. Is there a way to pause a specific update? For example, I want to pause 24H2, but not affect the other Windows 11 builds, 23H2, 25H2, without having to create a whole new update ring and exclude the devices we want to pause, so we can pause them in the newly created ring. Is there a way to pause an update without affecting other builds? Shirabi?
Yes. So I think just going back to just reading the question back, it's more relevant to feature update. So yes, like when you create within Windows AutoPatch, you can go ahead and create a specific policy targeting a specific release, and then just pause that specific release. I mean, usually the way we recommend people deploying updates is you create a policy per target version. So like if you might have a policy with all your defined predefined update rings for 24H2, you might have one for 25H2, and then you can just go ahead and just pause that or remove that one specific policy without impacting the other policies, if I'm getting the question right.
Yeah, as I was rereading it, I started looking at maybe the question is asking, I want to pause a quality update on my 24H2 devices without pausing it on my 25H2 devices. Is there a way, or 23H2, since 24 and 25 are in the same branch, but is there a way to pause it on 24H2 only, or would I have to create a whole new ring for that?
So
Chris,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, for quality updates, some of the stuff that Surabhi was mentioning earlier that was talked about at Ignite with the new quality update policies and things that are coming, that'll let you pause a specific iteration. So say you wanted to pause 10B, but you can't say pause 10B on 24H2 only. It would be 24H2 and 23 and 25. It's kind of all bundled together, but you are getting the capability to go from pause all my quality updates to pause just this specific quality update. And that way it'll essentially remove approvals for that. And then, yeah, I think Surabhi covered it well, where it's if you have a feature update that's going out and you just want to stop the release of 24H2 instead of 23 or 25H2, then for those devices, take the targeting and move into a different feature update policy with a lower version, because essentially it removes the approval for the release of 24H2 at that stage. And then if it's not approved, Windows Update won't offer the actual content to those devices. So if you just move it to a feature update policy with a lower version, if you remove the device from a feature update policy entirely, that's always a little more dicey, because then you could just say, hey, what does Woo have for me? And move to the next version. So
Right. All right, thanks. So because this could be interpreted a couple different ways, whoever asked the question, if you want to get back to the tech community, just reply to your own post with maybe some clarity for us, so we be sure to get back to you. We'll be reviewing all the comments on tech community all the way through Friday. Today is Tuesday live time, so we'll be reviewing these and answering them on the tech community for the next few days. All right, so we got a question on X. Does hot patching? So Nikita, we're going to go to you. Does hot patching respect existing compliance deadline policies or active hours during those baseline months?
Okay. So
and first, let's talk about what a baseline month means, and then we'll go ahead and answer that question.
Sure. So for those online, baseline month refers to the months within the calendar year that do not get a hot patch update. So those are the once in a quarter ones that your device needs, so it can build those in-memory patches for the hot patch months soon after. So hot patch baseline months are the same exact releases as a standard update. Those are January, we have April, July, and I believe October. Yes. So during those months, if you already have existing Windows set up via AutoPatch, those will still be followed for those months. I'm not sure if they're talking about in the question compliance deadline policies, like the ones you configure within AutoPatch or something different. I'm assuming it's the ones you can set up with your AutoPatch groups and rings.
Yeah, I'm assuming if I look at active hours, right, during those baseline, I just want to make sure that when the device does need to reboot during those baseline months, it won't reboot during active hours. If we're using hot patching on the baseline months, are we just making sure that devices aren't rebooting at an inopportune time? Like, again, are we following the deadline hours, the deferrals, the active hours? Is it all being followed during the hot patch baseline months? That's the way I read the question.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll just toss in there is if you're using deadlines with active hours, it's important to note that once that deadline is reached, it will overwrite the active hours. So this is a thing where I have heard customers bring up, hey, why is my device rebooting outside of my active hours? I'm like, well, you told it to. and so just want to make sure everyone's clear on the interaction between those policies.
That's a great point, Chris. I hear that a lot from my customers as well. On that they set the deadline or the active hours and didn't expect it to reboot, but they set a deadline. The deadline takes precedence over that active hours for sure. All right, we got a question on LinkedIn. I think this might be our first LinkedIn question. Is there any update on including KB numbers in the expedite policy dropdown to make it more detailed and easier to identify the KB numbers? Surabhi?
Yeah, I'll take that one. I've heard this feedback before, and I've heard this feedback in the last AMA, so that's why it's like top of mind. Yes, we are looking at what is the best way from UX perspective to add that, because the way the dropdown for expedite works today is the latest 2 security releases or the latest non-security release followed by like 2 security releases. Each security release itself could have multiple KBs associated with it, depending on the Windows OS version it's targeted for. in order to fit all that information in, we just want to make sure we're not making it more complex than it is today. So we're just trying to figure out the best way of including that, or a way by which we can have an association to that release and that KB on your expedite page. So absolutely on our radar, we're not forgotten about it, just looking at the right way of doing it. But thank you for bringing it up again.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. We have a few minutes left to get a couple more questions in. We got this one in tech community as well. If I need to roll back a hot patch update, Nikita, does it require a reboot at that point for the rollback to get applied?
Yes, this is a question that's come up a couple of times before. Unfortunately, when rolling back the update, you do get a reboot.
So, and we're not talking about just the baseline months. If baseline month is October and I install an update on December, but I need to roll it back, so it's basically rolling back to November, which is not a baseline month. I need to reboot after that rollback is complete. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And there are some other scenarios you could be installed or on the hot patch cycle and you reboot. And there are scenarios like I think one of the earlier questions we talked about out of band updates. We always think about security first. So if there's any 0-day or some other reason where your device restarts, yes, you'll get that restart. You might be taken off the hot patch train, but getting back on would happen right after the next baseline release. So there are some specific scenarios, and I think we probably have an AKA link to our FAQ page that can cover some of those minute details.
That's a great point. I think it's a little bit bigger than minute detail on. I'm on the hot patch train, and all of a sudden I realize I'm off the hot patch train. Like, what happened? How did I fall off? Because I talk to a lot of customers, and my peers talk to customers, and I hear all the time, oh yeah, you need to start using hot patch because you only need to reboot your machine 4 times a year. But the truth is, you get a .NET update, you get many reasons that you have to reboot your device. So if I'm rebooting my device, it's possible then to fall off that hot patch train and have to get back on it at the next baseline month. I think I heard you say that. I just want clarity on that. Like, if I reboot my device for other reasons, not because of updates, but
that shouldn't. So not every reboot will take you off. If you want to reboot more, that's perfectly okay. We know some people really enjoy getting that refresh set for their machine for other reasons. The real value add of having hot patch set is just being immediately security compliant. So those reboots may not take you out, but for those that might be out of band updates, like the ones that require 0-day fixes, it may require you to reboot and then be booted off the hot patch train. And those are the type of scenarios that we'll do our best to have in release notes, so customers are aware of what's happening with their device and why we prioritize security over the reboot experience. This experience.
Yep. Thanks. And again, for any of those issues or the documentation that we're talking about and Nikita's talking about, you can go to aka.ms Windows Release Help, and you can see all that information that we're talking about. And we found that FAQ, aka.ms hot patch FAQ, will land with everything we're talking about as well. All right, we have a question about drivers. I'm going to come up to you, Surabhi, for drivers. Is it possible to make sure drivers land during the Windows Update reboot phase? When display adapter drivers land, it could cause the screen to go blank, and network adapters can result in interruption to the service. So is it possible to make sure drivers land during that update reboot phase?
So we don't have this capability at this point in time, but absolutely looking at making sure that we can find a way by which we can orchestrate the drivers, all pending drivers, and just have one reboot along with your monthly security release. Still very early stages of investigation, so I wouldn't have a lot to say right now, but that was the kind of feedback that I was talking about when we spoke about extension drivers early on. While we are using the network, while we are using the peripherals like video and audio, the drivers should not install at that point in time is also something that we're closely monitoring and looking at. So I'll have more update probably by the next AMA that we come and talk to you about, but not at this point in time. But the feedback is heard. We know the problems, and we're actively investigating the issue right now.
So this was talked a little bit about at Ignite, Surabhi, with maintenance windows,
Right.
because maintenance windows allow you to control both, essentially set a window on the device saying when will something from Windows Update install, when will it reboot, and when will it download. And you can't do this per content type. So you're saying like only my drivers. You're saying, hey, this would be for all Windows Update content. I want it all to download and install at a specific time. So that was announced at Ignite. I believe the timeline we talked about there was a preview in Q1 of next year, and so that is something we are actively looking into, as Surabhi said. And you were spot on with your answer, but I think we announced some things, so that's pretty exciting.
Right. So maybe what we could do is in the tech community itself, we could put a link for previewing,
Yep.
and if you would want to just have a try of that behavior, yes.
Yep, I was just going to say, and you can join our tech community as well. I'm sorry, our customer connection program, aka.ms join community. That gets you our customer connection program. And even if someone at your company already belongs, someone at your business already belongs to the customer connection program, you should join as well. This is individual by individual at each company. And you get sneak peeks, you get private previews, you get to talk to the feature PMs. Again, that was aka.ms join community. We have a couple more minutes, but that's all. So no more time for questions. I'd love to get some final thoughts, some final tips. I'm going to go backwards from our introduction. So I'm going to start with Chris, and then go to Nikita, and then Surabhi to close it out. Chris, any final thoughts, any tips for our listeners, our viewers?
All right, I need to think hard to make sure I don't accidentally steal their thunder. But I guess the first thing I'd say is the water's warm. Like, we've got over 100 million people using Autopatch these days, so it's pretty well proven. And we're working on it all the time. In terms of tips, I'd say if you haven't got anything set up, Autopatch groups are great for setting up rollouts. Hotpatch is incredible for getting secure faster, and our reporting is essentially the best way to get the low latency insights from the team. So that's the three things I'll leave with.
Thanks, Chris. Nikita?
Yeah, Chris, those are great ones. I +1 all of those. And with the Hotpatch angle, think about, what do you need to do to remain at your version of highest security compliance? And if you can Hotpatch. And there's a lot of easy ways now within the Autopatch framework to understand your eligibility. So that's really exciting. And then also with the flip of a switch of just creating a quality update policy, Hotpatch can be enabled for those devices that are eligible. So try it today.
Thanks, Nikita. And thanks for all your work on Hotpatch. It really has been a game changer. Not that Autopatch hasn't been, but Hotpatch has really been a recent game changer. And Surabhi?
I'll keep it easy. There's nothing stopping trying. If you haven't tried Autopatch yet, just go ahead, create a policy, add a few devices, see the behavior, check out the reporting that we have. And yes, any new features, any new investments that we're making are going to be available for private preview to our CCP community. So as Joe mentioned, please join that community. We really, really look forward to all the feedback, and we take it very seriously. So Autopatch update readiness is something that's fresh from the oven. Please go ahead, try it, and we look forward to feedback from all of you.
Thank you so much, everyone. For everyone that asked questions, for everyone that's reviewing this recording because you couldn't join us live, again, please ask your questions on Tech Community. We'll leave those questions open until Friday, I think noon Pacific time, so US Pacific time. So you've got some time to review this again and ask your questions, follow up on other questions, and we'll continue to answer your questions. Our next session will be starting in a few minutes, and that's managing AI and agents in Windows. Again, you can join that at aka.ms AMA Windows AI. It's managing AI and agents in Windows. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all soon.